Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodhanandana Vraja Janarandana Yashodhanandana Vraja Janarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yashodhanandana Vraja Janarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Shodhara Satashishimad. His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajaka Shodhara Satashishimad. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem se Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. All glories to some devotees Hare Krishna. All glories to some devotees Hare Krishna. All glories to some devotees Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Now, do we have to set up the mic thing?
Oh, yeah.
Today we're reading second canto Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 9, text number 8. You pull it up. 298. Now, can you connect to it? Apparently neither of their phones are working. Okay. Divyam Sahasrabdham Amoga Darshano Jatanilatma Vijito Bhayendriyaha Atapyata Smakila Loka Tapanam Tapas Tapiyams Tapatam Samahitaha Divyam Sahasrabdhamamoga Darshano Divyam Sahasrabdhamamoga Darshano Jitanilatma Vijito Bhayendriyaha Jitanilatma Vijito Bhayendriyaha Atapyatasma Kila Lokatapanam Atapyatasma Kila Lokatapanam Tapastapiyam Stapatam Samahitaha Divyam Sahasrabdhamamoga Darshano Jitanilatma Vijito Bhayendriyaha Atapyatasma Kila Lokatapanam Tapastapiyam Stapatam Samahitaha Divyam Sahasrabdhamamoga Darshano Jitanilatma Vijito Bhayendriyaha Atapyatasma Kila Lokatapanam Tapastapiyam Stapatam Samahitaha. Please repeat. Divyam Sahasrabdhamamoga Darshano Yato ma vijato bhayendriya. Atapyatasma kila lokatapanam. Tapastapiyam stapata samahitaha. Devyam sahasrabdhamamoga darshano. Vijato bhayendriyaha. Atapyatasma kila lokatapanam. Tapastapiyam stapata samahitaha. Mason? Sahash. Devyam sahasrabdhamamoga darshano. Chitanilatma vijato bhayendriyaha. Atapyatasma kila lokatapanam. Tapastapiyam stapatam samahitaha. Mataji's. Devyam sahasrabdhamamoga darshano. Yitanilatma vijato bhayendriyaha. Atapyatasma kila lokatapanam. Tapastapiyam stapata samahitaha. Divyam, pertaining to the demigods in the higher planets. Sahasra, 1,000. Abdham, years. Amoga, spotless, without a tinge of impurity. Darshanaha, one who has such a vision of life. Jita, controlled. Anila, life. Atma, mind. Vijita, controlled over. Ubhyaya, both. Indriyaha, one who has such senses. Atapyata, executed penance. Sma, in the past. Akila, all. Loka, planet. Tapanam, enlightening. Tapaha, penance. Tapiyan, extremely hard penance. Tapatam, of all the executors of penances. Samahitaha, thus situated. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Translation. Lord Brahma underwent penances for 1,000 years by the calculation of the demigods. He heard this transcendental vibration from the sky, and he accepted it as divine. Thus he controlled his mind and senses, and the penances he executed were a great lesson for the living entities. Thus he is known as the greatest of all ascetics. Purport. Lord Brahma heard the occult sound tapa, but he did not see the person who vibrated the sound, and still he accepted the instruction as beneficial for him, and therefore he engaged himself in meditation for 1,000 celestial years. 1 celestial year is equal to 6 times 30 times 12 times 1,000 of our years. His acceptance of the sound was due to his pure vision of the absolute nature of the Lord, and due to his correct vision, he made no distinction between the Lord and the Lord's instruction. There is no difference between the Lord and the Lord's instruction. There is no difference between the Lord and the sound vibration coming from him, even though he is not personally present. The best way of understanding is to accept such divine instruction, and Brahma, the prime spiritual master of everyone, is the living example of this process of receiving transcendental knowledge. The potency of transcendental sound is never minimized because the vibrator is apparently absent. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita or any revealed scripture in the world is never to be accepted as an ordinary mundane sound without transcendental potency. One has to receive the transcendental sound from the right source, accept it as a reality, and prosecute the direction without hesitation. The secret of success is to receive the sound from the right source of a bona fide spiritual master. Mundane manufactured sound has no potency, and as such, seemingly transcendental sound received from an unauthorized person has no potency. One should be qualified enough to discern such transcendental potency, and either by discriminating or by fortune of chance, if one is able to receive the transcendental sound from the bona fide spiritual master, his path of liberation is guaranteed. The disciple, however, must be ready to execute the order of the bona fide spiritual master, as Lord Brahma executed the instruction of his spiritual master, the Lord himself. Following the order of the bona fide spiritual master is the only duty of the disciple, and this completely faithful execution of the order of the bona fide spiritual master is the secret of success. Lord Brahma controlled his 2 grades of senses by means of sense perception and sense organs, because he had to engage such senses in the execution of the order of the Lord. Therefore, controlling the senses means engaging them in the transcendental service of the Lord. The Lord's order descends in the disciplic succession through the bona fide spiritual master, and thus, execution of the order of the bona fide spiritual master is factual control of the senses. Such execution of penance in full faith and sincerity made Brahmaji so powerful that he became the creator of the universe. And because he was able to attain such power, he is called the best among the tapasvis. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Ataf Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sarvetam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padhan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vikasa Swaminiti Namine Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Sarasvate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashtatyare Shatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Divyam Zahashrabdam Amoga Darshano Jitani Latma Vejato Bhayendriyaha Atapyatasma Kilaloka Tapanam Tapastapiyam Stapatam Samahitaha. Lord Brahma underwent penances for 1,000 years by the calculation of the demigods. He heard this transcendental vibration from the sky, and he accepted it as divine. Thus, he controlled his mind and senses, and the penances he executed were a great lesson for the living entities. Thus, he is known as the greatest of all ascetics. We have been reading from this 2nd canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, which is titled The Cosmic Manifestation. And this chapter specifically answers by citing the Lord's version, is Shukadev Goswami answering the questions of Maharaj Parikshit. Over the last couple verses, we've been answering Maharaj Parikshit's question about Lord Brahma's appearance in this material world and his reception of transcendental knowledge, and specifically how he was able to perceive and get instruction from the Lord himself. So the other day I spoke on the Jivatma and the Paramatma, and just yesterday our Jita Girish Prabhu spoke about the importance of the Chaitya Guru and how to receive guidance in that way. And this translation today, Shukadeva Goswami really goes into what Lord Brahma did after he received the transcendental knowledge from the Supreme Lord, and the process that Brahma went to get his power and to actually see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the overall point and meaning of this verse is that this human form of life is actually meant for tapasya. That in easygoing life and execution of devotional service, pure devotional service, they don't go together. And we can see this practically through the example of Lord Brahma. That he was in a situation of suffering and he was in a situation of ignorance. There was literally only darkness around him and he didn't know what should be done and what shouldn't be done. And after hearing from his spiritual master, the Supreme Personality of Godhead himself, he followed the Lord's order, which was, as Prabhupada describes here in the purport, he heard the sound tapa, which means execution of penance, austerities, and to sacrifice. So in this way, Lord Brahma executed austerity for a long time. I don't know if anyone's ever done the math for these calculations, but I just thought I would for fun. And it's about like 20 billion of our years that Lord Brahma simply sat and executed tapa. So that's a really long time. That's a really, really, really long time. And one might ask, what's the point of going through all these penances and all this austerity? Why not just try to enjoy life for what it is? But actually, the situation in this material world is that we can either, quote unquote, suffer for Krishna by performing yajna, or we can suffer for Maya. In whatever situation we're in materially, we're going to be suffering. This is described by Lord Rishabdev in the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, in which he tells his sons that all living entities who have accepted material bodies in this world, one who has been awarded this human form of life should not work hard day and night simply for sense gratification, which is available even for hogs and dogs that eat stool. One should engage in penance and austerity to attain the divine position of devotional service. By such activity, one's heart is purified, and when one attains this position, he attains eternal blissful life, which is transcendental to material happiness and which continues forever. So no matter what form of species of life we're in, no matter what body we have, the same sense gratification is there. And similarly, no matter what material situation we're in, there's going to be so much material suffering in terms of the body, in terms of the current situation that we're in, from the people around us, and even from external factors such as weather and other things that are controlled by the demigods. So the fact that all this distress and all this sense gratification is there no matter what material situation we're in is that one should use this human form of life, which has the opportunity for a higher purpose, to engage in austerity and penance. And what is that austerity and penance? It's actually execution of devotional service. So this quote-unquote happiness that we can achieve and realize in the material world, it actually isn't happiness at all. This material situation is described like a person that's drowning, right? And when you're drowning, you're in so much distress and I don't have any practical experience, but we can only imagine what it's like to be having your mouth and your lungs filling with water and being unable to breathe. And happiness in this material world is compared to the drowning man who's about to die, being pulled up from the water and getting a gasp of air, and then being put right back under. So happiness in this material world is actually just the feeling of relief of the suffering. So we'll suffer so much in this material world, and one might say that to engage in austerity and penance and devotional service, one might also suffer. But the thing is, any material situation that we have, it's bound to be temporary. So even if we're in a quote-unquote happy situation, or even if we're in a quote-unquote suffering situation, the result of any activity in this material world will only be temporary. But the result of tapasya in devotional service is described in the Bhagavad Gita as janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tattvataha tyaktva deham punar janma naiti mameti sorjuna. That one who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So by execution of tapasya, we can actually become free from this material world, which is full of suffering, and we can actually attain our eternal, blissful life that's full of knowledge in the spiritual world with Krishna. So this is the process. And how does one engage in this tapasya? He receives instructions from the spiritual master. And the guru should engage the disciple in tapasya, in devotional service. Prabhupada says here in this purport that the secret of success is to receive the sound from the right source of a bona fide spiritual master. So this raises the question that who is a bona fide spiritual master? What are his qualities? And who is a bona fide disciple? And in order to understand this, we have to get example and evidence from Shastra. So what does the Shastra say? It says so many things. There's probably hundreds and hundreds of verses you could pull up. But two verses that stood out to me in particular was, first of all, the first verse of the Nectar of Instruction, Vacho vegam manasa kroda vegam jiva vegam udaro pasta vegam etan vegan yo vishaheta diraha sarvam api mam pritivim sashishyat. That a sober person who can tolerate the urge to speak, the mind's demands, and the actions of anger, the urges of the tongue, belly, and genitals, is qualified to make disciples all over the world. So, a proper spiritual master, a bona fide spiritual master, has to be a Goswami. Someone who has control over the senses, who has control over the mind's demands, actions of anger, and the urges of the body, and one gains practical control over these things by execution of tapasya, this person is qualified to make disciples all over the world. And similarly, in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the 3rd chapter, it is said that therefore any person who seriously desires real happiness must seek a bona fide spiritual master and take shelter of him by initiation. The qualification of a bona fide guru is that he has realized the conclusions of the scriptures by deliberation and is able to convince others of these conclusions. Such great personalities who have taken shelter of the Supreme Godhead, leaving aside all material considerations, should be understood to be bona fide spiritual masters. So a spiritual master must be sense-controlled. He must have realized the proper conclusions of the scriptures by having heard them from his spiritual master. And he must be at the shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna. And in this way, he can engage the disciple. So what is the qualification of a proper disciple? The only business of the disciple is to sincerely hear and take direction from the bona fide spiritual master who appears in disciplic succession. And we can see this ideal guru-disciple relationship between Krishna and Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. This is the ideal representation of how a guru and a disciple should act and how the disciple should approach the guru. So in 2nd chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the 7th verse is Karpanya dosho patasvabhava prachamitvam dharmasamuda chetaha yachche yasyan nishtaheta bruhitan me shishyasteham shadimam tvam prapanam. That Arjuna says that now that I'm confused about my duty and have lost all composure because of miserly weakness, in this condition I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I am your disciple and a soul surrendered unto you. Please instruct me. So just like Arjuna and Lord Brahma, they were in a situation of ignorance and they needed guidance by knowledge of a spiritual master. And both of them thought and knew that who better to approach than Krishna himself, who is full of all of the knowledge of everything that is to be known in both material and spiritual aspects. So therefore we should make this Bhagavad Gita and the Srimad Bhagavatam our life, because by following the Shastra and by knowing the Shastra, we are able to actually find out who is a bona fide spiritual master and inquire from him. Because by reading the Shastras like Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, we're able to search for the qualities of a spiritual master, and we're able to actually ask relevant questions to the spiritual master. So on this basis, one should practically go out and search for a spiritual master. Prabhupada says in this purport that the disciple, however, must be ready to execute the order of the bona fide spiritual master, as Lord Brahma executed the instruction of his spiritual master, the Lord himself. So one must find a guru whom he can surrender, and if this is not possible, one shouldn't waste his time. By surrendering to the proper person, one can very quickly come to understand this transcendental knowledge. So one should not just go out and surrender to, or quote-unquote surrender to, a guru if he cannot actually follow the instructions of the spiritual master. By following the instructions of the spiritual master, which is to engage in this tapasya, minimum 3 things should happen. Is that one should give up attachment for material things, one should attach ourselves to spiritual things, to Krishna, to devotional service, and one should develop a change of character. One shouldn't continue in their diseased ways of ignorance, but one should actually develop at least bare minimum qualities of the mode of goodness. And we can see practically in different situations in this world that people engage in this guru shopping, which, they go around to different gurus and different people offering spiritual guidance, and they find the guru which tells them what they want to hear. One guru might tell them, you should surrender everything unto Krishna, you should rise early, you should chant 16 rounds every day. And one guru might also tell you, you can wake up when you want, 16 rounds, maybe 8 rounds, maybe 4 rounds, depending on how you feel, depending on the day. And, maybe you might drink 4 cups of coffee every day, but that's okay. You can do that if that's what you need to, get up in the morning and execute your devotional service. So we shouldn't accept a guru who allows us to continue to engage in material sense gratification, because engaging in material sense gratification is the exact opposite of what the instructions of the spiritual master should be, which is to be engaged in tapasya, in devotional service. And this also goes the other way, that if a guru is telling them the right things, like you should chant 16 rounds, you should rise early, and you take initiation from the spiritual master and vow to chant minimum 16 rounds every day, follow the 4 regular principles of no meat eating, no gambling, no intoxication, no illicit sex, and you make these vows prematurely before you're ready, and you might think that, I kind of accepted a guru out of formality, and I maybe still want to, engage in gambling or intoxication, or, maybe I don't have time to chant my rounds every day, or maybe even it might go as far as that you might still have the desire for illicit sex, and you might think, oh, but if I get married, then I can have as much sex as I want anyway, right? But that's actually not the fact, and people who think this way have completely misunderstood the vows that they've took at initiation, and have misunderstood the actual importance of the spiritual master, that the spiritual master should be really engaging them in tapasya, in devotional service. And we can understand, and Prabhupada has said often, that an easygoing life and attainment of perfection in transcendental realization cannot go together. So this easygoing life, having a nice, comfortable material situation, and execution of pure devotional service cannot go together. This is compared to having or trying to start a fire, and you're pouring gasoline in one hand and water in another hand. So if we do this to a fire, the fire won't actually get going, and you might think, oh yeah, well, I'm pouring fuel on the fire, I'm following the right formula, but this fool is also pouring water directly on the fire and putting it out. So we should have a blazing fire so we can burn up these knots in the heart, and we can burn up all of our material desires in the fire of Harinam Sankirtan. So this is the instructions of the spiritual master. And the instructions of the spiritual master are transcendental and completely spiritual. Prabhupada talks about this in the purport, that mundane manufactured sound has no potency, and as such, seemingly transcendental sound received from an unauthorized person also has no potency. An example that's given over and over again that we've discussed previously is you can have practical examples of you drinking something like Coca-Cola, and you might get a refreshing taste, it might satisfy your tongue in a certain way. But simply by repeating Coca-Cola, 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 Coca-Cola over and over and over again, you won't actually get that taste and that experience of actually drinking Coca-Cola. But by simply chanting the Lord's names and following the instructions of the spiritual master, we're actually able to directly associate with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we're actually to associate with the spiritual master in the same way that they'd be present before us, simply by chanting and simply by following their instructions. And their instructions are based directly off of the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita, which are non-different and directly from Krishna. So we have in the Svetashvatara Upanishad, Yasya deve parabhaktir yatha deve tathagaro dasya te katiha hyarta prakashyante mahatmanaha. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master are all imports of the Vedic knowledge automatically revealed. So this is how we're actually able to see Krishna. We're able to see Krishna by hearing. And this is the practical realization that Lord Brahma had, and this is the answer to Maharaj Parikshit's question, is that by hearing instructions from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Brahma was actually able to practically realize his spiritual master, which was Krishna. And what is this hearing? Hearing means following whatever you're hearing, right? There's no point in hearing and getting instruction if you aren't going to follow and go by the example, by what you're told, right? If you hear something, but it simply goes in one ear and out the other, what is the point of your supposed hearing? So by hearing from the bona fide spiritual master, we should follow these instructions, and in this way we can serve the lotus feet of the spiritual master, right? There is no higher mantra than the lotus feet of the Guru. And the lotus feet of the spiritual master, which we have somehow and unworthily attained, are that topmost nectar for which we're always anxious. And how do you worship the lotus feet of the spiritual master? You do this by following his divine instructions. By following the Vani of the spiritual master, we become very dear to the spiritual master, and we're able to associate with him. And by continued following of these instructions, we're actually able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. One example of this that's very prominent in my mind is the example of my own spiritual master, His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, in that when he joined the movement in 1975, it was towards the tail end of Prabhupada's manifest presence on this earth. And this was a time where, in the beginning, the early days, you read like Miracle on 26 2nd Avenue or Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. In the early days of Prabhupada's movement, Prabhupada was directly there with every single one of his disciples, and you can hear their practical anecdotes of how that was like. But by the time it was 1975, there was so many disciples that it was hard to really get that personal, intimate association with Srila Prabhupada in his personal presence. But by simply following Prabhupada's instructions so strictly and by really imbibing the mood and mission of Srila Prabhupada, my own spiritual master has been able to become very dear to Srila Prabhupada and has been able to become one of Srila Prabhupada's dearmost associates by simply following the instructions of Srila Prabhupada. So we should follow examples like this. And Prabhupada says in this purport that following the order of the bona fide spiritual master is the only duty of the disciple. And this completely faithful execution of the order of the bona fide spiritual master is the secret of success. So this is the secret, that by engaging in the tapasya that is recommended by the spiritual master, we're actually able to become free from this samsara and this cycle of birth and death. So this is the practical process But what does that actually look like, and what are the results? In the purport, Prabhupada talks about that, therefore, controlling the senses means engaging them in transcendental service of the Lord. So, from an outward perspective, tapasya can look like maybe fasting for a couple weeks. It can look like taking a cold bath every single day. It can look like being on a particular diet. But actually, real tapasya is engaging oneself in devotional service. And the guru, who is a Goswami, or someone who has completely controlled the mind and the senses by engaging their mind, body, and words 100% in the devotional service of Krishna, wants to bring his disciples similarly up to that platform. So by engaging the disciple in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, the guru is able to bring the disciple also to the platform of a Goswami. And this process of devotional service is the only way by which the mind and the senses can be completely controlled. In other paths like Buddhism or other impersonal paths, they engage in hard, strenuous tapasya and meditation just for the means of cessation of the material suffering. They try to make the self desireless and give up all sorts of material attachments. And this is a good realization to come to, but just simply to negate the material suffering won't actually solve the problem of the jiva. Because the actual nature of the self is to have desires, and it's to want to perform activity, right? That's the constitutional position of the jiva. So simply by giving up all things material, one won't actually come to the purified platform because the self has to do something. So even if one engages in these rigorous tapasya, and even in Buddhism, they have this thing like be a monk for a day, or my spiritual master even describes, because he spent a lot of time in Thailand and Bangladesh where this philosophy is prominent, that it's basically mandatory that everyone in these countries becomes a monk for some time. But it's just seen as, oh yeah, in this stage of your life, you're a monk for some time, and then you take what you learn from there, and then you kind of go on in your material life. So just by negating these material senses which are so strong, it won't actually solve that problem, and we'll simply fall into these material desires again if our senses and our mind doesn't have some sort of engagement. It's said in the 6th canto of this Srimad Bhagavatam that the spiritual master teaches the disciple how to give up materialistic life, and it is the disciple's duty to assimilate his instructions and ultimately follow the path back home, back to Godhead. One might think that this might sound nice, and the philosophy of this might be nice in theory, but and I mean all of us have definitely had practical experience of this, but trying to control the mind and the senses, it's not very easy, right? Trying to extinguish our material desires and engage ourselves fully in Krishna consciousness, it might be easy just to say it, but it's a different thing to actually go about this process of tapasya and this process of devotional service. So what does this practically look like? We can nicely take the example of our Namacharya, Srila Haridas Thakur, and, Haridas Thakur was so pure, he would chant and chant and chant. He would just Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Just almost his entire day was spent just chanting. And actually a prostitute was sent to the place where Haridas Thakur was staying, and this was made as an attempt for, I think it was by the Qazi or some ruling official in that time, to try and make him fall down. And this prostitute came and tried to engage in some sexual activity with Haridas Thakur. And Haridas Thakur simply said, I'm chanting nicely right now. once I finish my rounds, then we can enjoy together. And in this way, the whole night passed, and Haridas Thakur was Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And then by the end of the night, when he had finished his rounds, the night was over, and the prostitute had left. And he was like, okay. And then he just went on with his chanting for the next day. And then night after night, the prostitute came and tried to make Haridas Thakur fall down. And every night he would say the same thing, that, yeah, I just have all these rounds left, I have to chant. And then, yeah, definitely after I finish my rounds, then I can serve you and we can do as you like. And he would, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And the same thing would happen every single night. And gradually, actually, what happened is that he was chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. And then the prostitute also began chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So in this way, we can actually gradually make our mind a pure devotee of Krishna. That if we tell our mind, you want to do all these things now, and you want to engage in this activity and that material activity and this sense gratification and that sense gratification. But if you simply say, okay, we can do all that stuff later, but now if you'll just please let me chant my rounds and chant my japa. And, especially life in the ashram, you don't really have so much free time. So if you simply tell your mind, now we should engage in this chanting and engage in the instructions of the spiritual master, gradually you'll spend so much time doing this and have so little time for your material sense gratification that gradually you'll make your mind a devotee of Krishna. Because Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that for him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So we should actually make our mind a pure devotee of Krishna and constantly engage the mind in devotional service. And even though it might be hard, we aren't like Haridas Thakur, where we can just chant all day. But gradually, if we apply ourselves to this process of devotional service, if we keep chanting, and if we keep serving the lotus feet of the Guru, that, this Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma, that the lotus feet of the spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain pure devotional service. So simply by following the instructions of the spiritual master and engaging in tapasya, we can realize practical control of the senses and actually engage our lives 100% in the service of Krishna, and we can gain control over the mind, gain control over the senses. And, actually this becomes a very blissful process. If you see devotees who have been in the movement for so many years, like devotees that are coming to my mind, like Brigupati Prabhu and Parmeshwar Prabhu, even our Mahotsaha Prabhu, that from an external point of view, they might be engaging in so many austerities and live a very difficult life. But if you actually get to associate with these people, they're some of the most awesome, blissed out people that you'll ever meet in this whole world. So gradually, because we're so afflicted by this material disease, it's like I was saying previously a couple of days back, that we're eating this sugar candy and we're tasting it as very bitter, but actually it's very sweet. So we have to give up this material disease and actually be able to relish and taste this sweet nectar of Krishna consciousness. So practically, one might say, what is this order? Because like I was saying before, if someone just tells you, engage in tapasya, you might do so many random weird things. Like you might think, I have to do tapasya, so I won't eat for the next 4 days. Or you might think, I have to do some tapasya, so instead of sitting nicely on the ground, I'll sit in that corner and try to stand on my head for the whole Bhagavatam class, and in that way I'll engage in some sort of austerity. But actually this tapasya has come in the disciplic succession all the way from Krishna. And how to engage in this tapasya has been given to us by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that we should spread his Sankirtan movement to every town and village. In the Madhya Lila, it said, Yare deka tare kaha Krishna upadesh, amaragya guru hana tare e desh. That instruct everyone to follow the orders of Lord Krishna as they are given in the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. In this way, become its spiritual master and try to liberate everyone in this land. Our acharyas like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, our own Srila Prabhupada, and my own spiritual master have really emphasized this book distribution as the best way to please Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and as the best tapasya to control our mind and control our senses and to engage in devotional service. So we should every day, this Brihat Mridanga, this Sankirtan should be performed, this Harinam and this book distribution should be done every single day. And we're practically experiencing this tapasya in this Prabhupada marathon for all of our devotees that are daily going out. In Miami it's a little warmer where some of our devotees are, but for our Avadhu Chandra Prabhu, our Bhakta Nali and Bhakta Charandeep, who are going out there in the cold for 8 hours, meeting so many different mean and nasty people that don't want anything to do with them and tell you so many things, they're still going out every single day. And like I was saying, Parameshwar Prabhu, Brigupati Prabhu, Mahotsa Prabhu, who have been doing this for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. One might be able to, someone new who's been distributing books for 6 months might think like, whoa, like how does someone, you go through one Prabhupada marathon and you might think, oh yeah, bro, like that was crazy. But to think that, oh yeah, we actually do this every single year. And devotees who have been in the movement for 30 years, 40 years, do this for 30 years and 40 years. They go out on book distribution. They have the Prabhupada marathon every single year. And these devotees are the most blissful, engaged devotees that you'll meet. So we should follow their example, and gradually we'll be able to taste that sweet nectar of the orders of our spiritual master, our own spiritual master. And Prabhupada often said when they would tell him the book scores for the marathon every year that you should double your scores for next year. The devotees would have a huge year out there on book distribution, and they would think like, wow, like Prabhupada's going to be like amazed at what we did. And Prabhupada would kind of double it. So similarly, there's no limit to the instructions of the spiritual master. We should never think that we have completed the order of the spiritual master. We're chanting every day this Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And by chanting, we aren't just saying the mantra and we aren't just doing service for our lips by moving them up and down and moving the tongue in a certain way, but we're actually asking the Supreme Personality of Godhead, asking the spiritual master for service. So if we're asking every single day for more and more service, we shouldn't be at the same time thinking that, oh yeah, I've done enough service, I've completed and fulfilled the orders of my spiritual master. But actually one should come to the realization that, I'll actually never be able to fully fulfill the order of my spiritual master, but I can try my best to do as such. So we've been ordered to double our scores for this marathon. What percent are we at? Do you know? So like 49 or something? 45. So yeah, we have, 2.5 weeks left? So we have to do 50% in 2.5 weeks. That might seem like impossible, but like Prabhupada would say, impossible is only a word in a fool's dictionary. So we shouldn't be fools, but we should be understanding that Krishna can make anything happen. So if it's the desire of Krishna and the desire of our spiritual master and the desire of our similarly assembled devotees to double the scores, then that's what will happen. So everybody who's going out today can just have that mindset of, I'm engaging in this tapasya, I'm following in the orders of my spiritual master, and by doing so, I'll gradually be able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead face to face. I was hearing an anecdote from one senior devotee, and he was describing it to me that he was like, yeah, Prabhu, one day you'll just be out there on book distribution and you'll give someone a book and you'll turn around and you'll see Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu right there. That's amazing. That after spending our whole life, if we spend our whole life simply distributing books and engaging in the tapasya which is recommended by the spiritual master, Lord Chaitanya and Krishna will reward us in full. There's no question of us not attaining the eternal abode. It's just like I said earlier, right? It's janma karma chame divyam evam yo veti tatvataha tyaktva deham punar janma naiti mameti sorjuna. That one who knows this transcendental nature of my body does not, upon leaving this body, take birth again in the material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. Lord Chaitanya will personally come and take us back home, back to Godhead, if we engage in this Sankirtan and this book distribution throughout our life. So I'll end my class here. If there's any questions, comments, corrections, I'll take those now. Ethan, can you put the other piece of the microphone on it?
Thank you, Prabhu. I just have a comment. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Go ahead, Prabhu.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Jai, I was just thinking what you said about the devotees in Miami and devotees in Atlanta and stuff, the different tapasya that they might not be cold down there, but they definitely have their own form of austerity that they're going through, and
Big time.
just thinking about them. But yeah, no matter where you're going on books, there's going to be some sort of endeavor in tapasya and that.
Yeah, thank you for making that point. It's said that the more we try to get out of the material world, the harder Maya tries to pull us back. So we're at, from an external perspective, one who's distributing books in Atlanta might look at the Miami party and think, it's like 80 degrees down there, maybe I'll want to go to Miami. But, for all those devotees that are down there, prayers to the devotees that are down there, because every day there's, Maya, we call it a Maya-ami, because it's just a city full of sense gratification. Everywhere you turn, there's people and there's advertisements, and everything there is geared to this idea of how may I enjoy the material world as much as possible. So to go out there and to try and give people Srila Prabhupada's books, it's not exactly the easiest crowd. You tell people, does happiness come from outside or inside? They all say outside, right? Matter or spirit, they all say matter. Right? You're like, dang, what do I say now? Right? So they're all trying to engage in this material sense gratification. And there's different people down there which also make it very hard to distribute books. But yeah, those devotees that are going out in Miami every single day, those are some really awesome, fired up devotees.
We got Bhakta Jacob on the line.
Jai, Jacobo, Hare Krishna.
Go ahead, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Oh, was that Thai?
Tata.
Haribo.
Hare Krishna.
So speaking on the behalf of all the devotees in Miami, we were just, trying to express how, it really is a struggle down here. We was, begging for the mercy. If all the devotees in, Christian life, they can, please bless us. It is, it's not a game out here. Maya is very strong, and it may be 80 degrees, but it's damn, every day is a damn struggle.
Yeah, big time.
Janardana Krishna Prabhu, I really relish the class you gave today. Thank you so much. If you can really bless us, because in Miami, it's they're not doing it one time for the one time at all. It's a struggle out here. I'm trying my best, Prabhu.
Yeah,
I think Maya wants to say something.
I'm very grateful for advanced devotees such as yourself to be able to give us such clarification on this transcendental knowledge. So thank you. I'm very grateful for advanced devotees such as yourself to be able to give us.
Wow, that's pretty bogus, but yeah, I don't have any blessings to give personally, but our Avaduta Chandra Prabhu, our Bhakta Nali, and our Bhakta Charandeep, who are actually going out every single day, it's like, what am I doing here? I'm just eating and sleeping all day. That's it. So for our devotees that are actually going out and engaging in the fire of Sankirtan and book distribution every single day, you should get your blessings from them. So, Avadu Chandra Prabhu, you had a comment?
Yeah, Prabhu, without you, we wouldn't be able to distribute any books. Nothing to eat.
I don't know about that.
Just in regard to Haridas Thakur, it was Ramachandra Khan who was envious of Haridas Thakur, and who later was cursed by Lord Nityananda. It was ruined. And the prostitute you mentioned, and also later Maya Devi herself comes, and Haridas Thakur still was fixed in his vow. And something I've been thinking about a lot, because when we go out on the streets every day, we meet so many different kinds of people. In today's purport, Prabhupada mentioned hearing from scripture such as Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, and Prabhupada also said in any other scripture. I'll read the statement actually because it's kind of refreshing. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam or Bhagavad Gita or any other revealed scripture in the world is never to be accepted as an ordinary mundane sound without transcendental potency. So you may meet people, you may speak with so many Muslims, Christians, and Jehovah's, and the idea is to be like, there's attachment and aversion, so you're like averse to them. But I always enjoy coming across Prabhupada's statements on other religions of the world, because Prabhupada's mood is so perfect, and to imbibe that when we go out and meet with people, then you won't have any, everything will be smooth, you're not going to rub against these people and create friction, but you're just out there remembering Prabhupada's approach and just giving respect to people, even if, because you might see when we read the Quran and you're like, oh, you're a fool, who are you? Oh, you read the Bible, you don't even follow Jesus. But Prabhupada is saying, any revealed scripture in the world is never accepted as ordinary or mundane. I mean, Bhagavatam and Gita for sure we can accept, but it's a very interesting statement.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Prabhu, thank you so much for that point. I was listening to this class that was just put out yesterday by my spiritual master, His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, and it was in Russia at the anniversary of the installation of the Gornitai deities there. And he was talking about how we should worship Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nityananda Prabhu. And Maharaj was saying that Lord Chaitanya is the most merciful incarnation of Krishna, and he gave mercy to so many people. But if you look at the people that were in his intimate association, like you look at the example of Chota Haridas, who sung so nicely, but simply by like a minor fall down in deviation, he was expelled by the association of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So it's like you were saying how what was it, Ramachandra Khan? That Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda are so merciful to his or to their devotees, but any offense to the devotees and they'll chop you up like anything. That's a good point. Ethan? Yeah, I don't know where the rubber band went. Back to God.
Yeah, so you were speaking about these very advanced devotees such as Mahota Prabhu, Parameshwar Prabhu, and Brigupati Prabhu. And like you're just looking at them, it's like, wow, like gosh, they're going through all this, but they're just like so blissed out, like all the time. It's quite amazing. But like, and like new people coming in, they're like trying to do all these things, and it's like going through these struggles. It's like, man, this is so hard, and like not feeling as ecstatic as they are feeling. And so you're just sitting there like, just sitting there like, this is harder than what I was doing in the material world. Like, why don't I just do the material stuff? And so like the question comes to like, how do you stay inspired to like continue going through these tapasyas in devotional service?
Well, first of all, that first verse that I quoted from Rishabh was that first of all, from like the philosophical point of view, that any happiness or any distress that you're experiencing on the material platform is available for any body and any life in this material world, even the hogs and dogs that eat stool. But we should engage this life that we have and that we've been blessed with in tapasya, because we can actually attain the bliss and the experience that these devotees that we're seeing are having, right? By getting the association of these senior devotees and by fired up devotees such as, just to name a few, Brigupati Prabhu, Parameshwar Prabhu, Mahotsaha Prabhu, that you can see that the process actually works, right? It's one thing if a doctor gives you a medicine, but you look at all of his patients and they're still sick, and you're like, I don't know about this guy, right? But if you look at a doctor who's giving you medication and has cured so many people, and people are giving you anecdotal evidence, like, bro, this doctor's the best, bro. Like, he cured me of all my diseases, right? You can actually trust that you'll get the same effect. So we can see these devotees that have dedicated their lives to Sankirtan and to book distribution, and the practical bliss that they're experiencing, we can experience the same bliss just if we engage in Sankirtan and book distribution throughout our whole lives. And the same is true in the opposite effect, that we can see devotees who might have been in the movement for some time, or who might even have been born in a devotee family, but don't take up to this preaching mission and this Sankirtan movement, that they aren't really experiencing the bliss of Krishna consciousness. In another lecture by my spiritual master, His Holiness Bhakti Vikas Maharaj, that I was listening to the other day, he was describing how the real bliss of devotional service comes through this preaching work, because it's the service that's most pleasing to Krishna and to Lord Chaitanya, and it really connects us with the overflowing ocean of nectar that's coming from Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So by engaging in this preaching mission, we're actually able to really experience the bliss of Krishna consciousness. And without this preaching, we might not experience the full bliss of Krishna consciousness. So it's simply, if we stick to this process that's been prescribed by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that instructs us and try to liberate everyone in this land, that we'll actually practically be able to experience the full bliss of Krishna consciousness. So it might be suffering now, I've definitely had experience like this, definitely had. But we can practically see that if we simply go on with the process, that we'll be able to have our eternal, blissful life full of knowledge in transcendental loving service to Guru and Gauranga. You had another comment, Prabhu?
Dr. Nelly.
Nelly
Go
G.
ahead, Nelly.
I'm live. I'm on air.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. The Atlanta crew's definitely dealing with some cold weather, but when we got
It's
the
not even
best
cold here.
Synchrotron spot on the whole planet, I feel like it's, I'm putting up a lousy 20 stacks every day. But I know them boys in Miami. I know what they're dealing with. Going to Lincoln Road, quadrupling my score, Jacob, killing it. But let's just speak of the other crew out there, doing Bhagavatams every day, single-handedly carrying the marathon. So shout out to them guys. Hare Krishna Prabhu, Mahotsa Prabhu, Matsur Prabhu, Bhakta Nick.
Hey, Nikhilesh.
All glorious to you guys.
Yeah, that party out there in Dallas. What was it that Mahotsa Prabhu did? 30 Srimad Bhagavatams going door to door?
He did 30 at Patel and I think 18 door to door.
Only 18?
I think so.
I thought that they did a lot more that day. Anyway, he can clarify that with me later, because I'm sure it was more than 18. But yeah, doing so many sets of Srimad Bhagavatam out there, there's no question that that's so pleasing to Lord Chaitanya and pleasing to his spiritual master too. The whole point that I was discussing that Srila Prabhupada brought up was that this tapasya, it's the order of the spiritual master, and by executing the order of the spiritual master, it's 30 at the Indian store and 16 door to door. So yeah, that's crazy. So it must be so pleasing to Lord Chaitanya and so pleasing to his own spiritual master. Any other questions from the men? Mason? Mataji's, any questions? All right. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Vanshakalpatarubhyascha kripasinubhyevacha.